see and comprehend without having to do the complex thinking of looking at degraded 3-million-year-old geometry. Now, if that's true, and these guys ultimately come forward with this, and the appropriate press people take the ball and run with it, and begin to ask some hard questions, my bet is that there will be revealed in tinkering with at least the first image. I think the second and third one are pretty much the way they came down, because for one thing, the histograms match much more closely the Viking data from 20 years ago. Now they should be better because the camera and the technology is a lot better, but at least they are in the right ballpark. They're about 120 DN digital numbers as opposed to the 42 for that first image. But I think that somebody tried to snooker us on image number 1, and that by and large, with the reaction of the press, they succeeded, and it's up to us now to take this new information, go back to the press people and say, hey, guess what? There's something on this image so outrageous that it has to be fake. If it's fake, and on the official NASA website, it has to be put there by either the bad guys as a stupid joke on all of us, which they couldn't get away with because Golden would try them, or it's the good guys attempting to trip up the bad guys, meaning the ones who are hiding and dragging their feet, and ultimately we're going to figure it all out. So that's the long answer to your short question, and to go back to the short answer, yes. I think that first image was tinkered with. Yes, back in the back there.
With that information, with this information about tampering on number 1, it doesn't really matter because you got number 2 and 3 that almost proves a lot of the theories and a lot of the images that they have to look at.
Well, you know that and I know that, but for reporters inside the Beltway who are much more interested in finding out if Bill really slept with you-know-who, if they can find that NASA cheated on number 1, we won. That's the level of mediocrity and intelligent nonsense that we're dealing with. Now, if we can get them to write that maybe NASA cheated, then everybody will go, oh my God, maybe we should look at these pictures again. So the politics, I think the inside guys know most reporters and how they superficially would much rather find a scandal than an ancient civilization. Yes? Oh, no, right, and then you. No, him first, then you. Sorry.
What kind of inference do you draw from Greer's research in connection with your presentation today and your idea today?
What kind of inference do I draw from Greer's, Steve Greer, his research in connection with the data I presented today? Stephen has made many inferences. Which one are you thinking of?
All the people he has had lined up.
Okay. All the people that he has willing to testify. Well, over the years, as you know, we've had a number of NASA insiders come forth and actually sit before the national press. I'm thinking of our Lunar Conference press briefing at the National Press Club in Washington, where we had Ken Johnston, we had Mars from McDonnell Douglas, we had Ron Nix from Parsons, and the press simply ignored them. The problem is, unless we crack the fourth estate, unless we get them to admit this is interesting, no amount of official expert testimony, I think, is going to make, as my dad used to say, a tinker's dam. Because we're dealing with the mindset of editors and reporters for whom this can't be real. And by this I mean the entire ET phenomenology. A couple of days ago, there was a major piece that ran on us in USA Today. I know for a fact that the reporter wanted a much bigger, much more thorough, much more comparative, much more insightful piece, which included some of the enhancements I've shown you this afternoon. Instead, what the editors wanted was my picture. I mean, who cares what I look like? Let's look at Mars. But they asked for my picture, and they ran it and 2 views of the face on Mars, and then they did a lot of copy basically calling us Mars buffs, including Tom Van Flandern, who happens to have a PhD from Yale and happens to be an astronomer of world-class note and happens to have published in his own right some seminal papers, but to USA Today, because he's curious about Cydonia, Dr. Van Flandern's eminent Yale credentials have been reduced to Mars buff. Unless we get past the filters of the Fourth Estate, I don't care how many witnesses Greer brings out of the closet, nobody is going to pay attention until an authority figure, and in this case the press has subsumed the authority figure of government. It's what the press tells us is reality, not what Bill Clinton says. If CNN doesn't say it's real, nobody is going to stand up and salute. Which is why I keep sending those faxes to Ted and John and Dan and all those other guys. Let's move this around because we don't have a lot of time. Yeah. And speak up loudly, please. In fact, stand up. No, I didn't say one more. I said I want 12 more.
Yeah.
One every 9 days.
I wanted to mention that to you.
Yes.
I heard you say on the radio.
Yes.
Go.
Absolutely, thank you. I tried to, okay? But I need a lot of help. The reason we got these pictures, I think, is unequivocally because of Art Bell's audience. I'm sure there's some people here listening to Art, who got off their duff, went to their fax machines, and papered the floor of Dan Goldman's office with faxes. And then I know from our sources at ABC that these people who sent copies over to Koppel were very thoughtful, intelligent, well-spoken Americans. There were some brilliantly, carefully worded requests of government, a la the Constitution, for redress of grievances, namely, take the damn pictures. And the honest side of NASA, the side that basically wants this to go away, they acceded to those requests. It's time to do it again, only now we thank them for what they did, and we tell them the jury is still out, there's remarkable new evidence, and it won't be closed until we get as much data as this 5-month period can give us, and that will really close the books. Because that would give us enough of a statistical set that we could really make some real decisions. But at the moment, we're on the edge where you can see what I see, and I see what I see, but people like Art and Albee, well, Art was a special case. Anyway, I fully support you that we need more than just one. Yes, down here.
Have you ever compared images of landscape on Mars with images of natural formations on Earth, or even other planets such as West King,
You do get complex geology that mimics to some degree some overseas, but you don't get a lot of it. It's in a restricted region, and it's very evanescent, and it's primarily water erosion. There is no water erosion on Mars. There is wind erosion. There is basically the abrasion of millions of years of throwing talcum powder at 300 miles an hour at this stuff. So when I ask the people who are expert in dry desert geology, people like Ron Nix, can you explain this? They say, no. Superficially, the area down south in that second strip that I call Levittown, which I wanted to show you, but time is, please go to the web. Everything you saw today and a lot more is up on the web. It looks superficially like mud cracking, except the scale is 100 times bigger. So you'd have to say, okay, then Mars has some kind of weird, unique, special geology. But wait a minute, you just violated the law of parsimony. Because as I tried to say to the guy on CBS the other night, there are no Martian geologists being paid by NASA. All we have are terrestrial geologists who look at these pictures, all the pictures, from the perspective of terrestrial familiarity with terrestrial geology in a variety of terrestrial environments. If you go to Mars and you're looking at something that you don't understand, and you say, oh, it's got to be a totally unknown geology that I've never seen before, but it's Martian, you have definitely cheated. Now, there is something that could be on Mars that we do know, that's also here on Earth, that we readily can recognize in a photograph. It's called the artifacts of intelligence. Because what most people forget is that intelligence is as much a part of the natural landscape, at least on Earth, as geology. To not include as an equal contender, it could have been a contender, to not include artificial engineering and ruins as one of the horses that run, to test that along with geology and weird meteorological conditions and all that, I don't think is playing the game fair. If you try to create special geology for Mars and explain everything as, oh, well, that's weird Martian geology, then basically you're invoking magic and arm waving and not true science. Okay, over here.
This question is one for the one in the back. I also like to say I have a photo about it and verify that it's not natural.
Can you speak up a little?
I was wondering if you had any reason to believe that NASA is concealing any other information on any other topics or any topics related.
Oh my God. Ned is asking me if I think NASA is concealing any other information. Again, you want the long answer or the short answer? Short answer is yes. See me after class. No. No, of course they're concealing all kinds of stuff. And the reasons, he already asked me, well, hold on, wait a minute. Why would NASA do this? Wouldn't it be a gold card for NASA? Wouldn't Congress open the coffers and the American people, gun home, we're off to Mars, we're going to look at aliens? The people who ask you that question, and I don't put you in that category because I think you have a more sophisticated take, they have never read Machiavelli. All right? They look at the space program through the eyes of those who have basically set the agenda for what we think about the space program. It's kind of a tautology, it's a closed circle. The mantra of NASA is everything is open, everything is open, everything is open, everything is open. Well, as my grandmother used to say, it only takes one white crow to prove that all crows aren't black. I show people lots of pictures. What people forget is there doesn't have to be an artifact in every single picture. There only has to be one good artifact in one picture to prove that NASA is not telling us the truth. Now, the problem is that it's kind of subjective. What some people see in this picture, other people don't see in that picture, that kind of thing. So there's kind of, the body of evidence, the weight now is that overwhelming numbers of people are seeing overwhelming numbers of artifacts and overwhelming numbers of pictures. And NASA is telling us there's nothing there. Well, then wait a minute. Are we smarter than NASA? No, that's a dumb question. No, there are lots of bright people in NASA who, for some reason, have been keeping their mouths shut. So then you have to ask the question, why would an agency apparently dedicated to openness, where every day they keep telling us we're so open, why would they possibly conceal what would be the gold card? And there are two levels of the answer. One is we can prove that NASA, without question, has withhold data. How do we prove it? Because we have a paper trail. There was a congressman, whose name escapes me at the moment, who served on the House Committee of Science, Space, and Technology, and he was on the investigation subcommittee. Dan Wolpe was his name, from Michigan, who a few years ago began investigating something very mundane, cost overruns on the SNAP-A nuclear reactor that NASA was trying to build at NASA Lewis, the Space Center, which I've been invited to speak several times. And as Wolpe and his staff investigated NASA Lewis, to their astonishment and shock, they discovered a set of official memoranda from the director of the NASA Lewis Research Center on NASA Lewis letterhead, on stationery. Kind of stuff that Ken Starr would love to get his hands on, right? Basically instructing NASA employees on how to lie, cheat, and steal and conceal on FOIA requests. But this is official. There is no doubt these memos existed. There's no doubt that NASA employees are being told how to evade and avoid and confuse, like use Post-its and then mix them up, don't take notes because they can be used in a court of law. All this stuff of how to avoid the law. So when people say to me, would NASA do it? Yeah, they've done it. Now, would they do it on this? Okay, that brings up the second level question. Back to Machiavelli. What was Machiavelli's basic thesis? All right? If you had to condense it down, I understand there are some philosophy makers here. If you had to condense Machiavelli down to one sentence, what would you say he was trying to tell people? Anyway,
The end justifies the means?
The end justifies the means. Very good, all right? Now, in this case, what is the end that these guys hiding stuff would be trying to justify? The idea that knowledge is power. Remember, the human condition, the human history is of competing groups competing against other groups where they try everything in the environment to get an edge on the other competing group. Somewhere along that road, of which NASA and the federal government are part, we got the idea that if the human race, if NASA, were to discover the most extraordinary, most powerful prize in human history, namely evidence of a high-tech civilization with the means to go back and find out all the neat secrets from hyperdimensional energy to unlimited biology that would allow certain folks to live 1,000 years, that they would freely share it with the rest of us. Now, who in the world gave us that stupid idea? I mean, we have been bamboozled by propaganda. NASA is the only agency that reporters never ask when NASA says this and this and this is so, they don't say, prove it. Can you imagine if Bill Clinton and Monica Lewinsky were to disappear from Washington together for a week? What every press person in the world would be doing and thinking and saying and writing? We have a spacecraft which has disappeared for a whole month behind the sun. Do you think anybody's asking, what is NASA doing with Mars Surveyor when it, quote, technically can't talk to Mars Surveyor, and I know and I can show you in 30 seconds how it can? No, because NASA is above suspicion. It's only rocks and craters and radiation. It's pure science. It has no value. In other words, what we are being told is that against the backdrop of history, everything that NASA does literally has no value. Because otherwise, we'd be suspecting that somebody might be trying to cheat us on it. We suspect the Treasury. We suspect the Agriculture Department. We certainly suspect the DOD. When was the last time you bought a $600 coffee pot? But we don't suspect NASA. And finally, we have a document. Remember back in the real world where documents count. It's called the Brookings Report. And Brookings said in black and white. Now, it said it 30 years ago, so there are people on the radio who say, oh my God, that's a 30-year-old document. That can't be relevant anymore. Oh, yeah? The Brookings Report says, I'm going to paraphrase, that in the next 20 or 30 years, from the perspective of 1959, when it was written, this official study for NASA, commissioned, give them money to do it, that NASA could well find evidence of extraterrestrial presence in the solar system in the form of ruins on the Earth, on Mars, the Moon, or Venus. Now, technology and science have eliminated Venus, but that still leaves the Moon and Mars, and the Enterprise mission and colleagues have discovered astonishing ruins on both. The next thing that Brookings said to NASA, I'm going to paraphrase, was, and by the way, guys, if you find it, hide it, because they can't take it. Which I think was a wonderful excuse to basically, in the best Machiavellian tradition, allow the power mongers inside that know the value of ET ruins to go and explore them themselves and reap the benefits themselves and to hell with the rest of us. And it must change. And it will change. That's the long answer. Let's see, I think let's go back in the middle.
Are you familiar with the work of Dr. Einstein?
Yes.
Okay. As a matter of fact, it was his writings and some of his literature that first introduced me to your work.
Okay.
I read the article, it was in Fake Magazine back about 3 years ago. My question is, concerning his work and philosophy for pushing the Sierra Leone stamp as well as the coin of face of Mars. What is your opinion on his future as we go further down the road the next several years and whether or not NASA is going to release this information?
Is this a financial question? No, but you want to know whether the stamps will appreciate?
I invested in some of those
Aha!
items.
He invested in the stamps and coins.
His last letter, by the way, basically, his last letter
did not believe a lot of credence to the work at this point because he said, well, because of that first picture that was released back in the first part of April, he said it looks like that we're not going to have any.
God, maybe he'll sell something real cheap.
But he said that there is a way out. There is a future where we could, and if something could happen.
Well, I mean, something that's going to happen is that this data you saw today is going to ultimately get permeated through the mainstream, and even Alan will take a look at the website. I haven't talked to Alan in quite a while, so I probably should call him up and say, you know, like Mark Twain said, that the rumors of his demise have been woefully exaggerated. See, the problem with instant science is, if you're basing real-world outcomes on something as tenuous as validity of an extraterrestrial civilization, you cannot be a short timer. You certainly have to take the long view. I would recommend that anybody who bought those stamps and those coins just sit on them. Because when the ultimate jury is in and the ultimate fallout from what is now known and what can be known comes to pass, I think those people are going to be very, very, very happy campers. So my advice is for anybody who bought stamps and coins, look, I was all intrigued with the idea of stamps and coins because of one thing. Back when Sierra Leone and Malta and Grenada each decided to put out these commemoratives, it was a time when, A, we only had Viking data, we only had NASA people shooting at us, and it was a real-world affirmation of an extraordinary potential. It was a geopolitical kind of rearguard action. Now, of course, since people have, purchased and invested in some of these things, it could become for those people more than a political statement, a symbolic statement. So my advice is, don't do anything. The best is yet to come. Way back there.
Yeah, I just had a question. I was just thinking, you talked about a wonderful end if, someday we put the resources and financial resources together to launch a mission, or possibly even a manned mission, back to Mars and ultimately find out what's there, right?
That's right.
Now, you did a lunar series, which I thought was fantastic. Now, that's something that right now with our technology and not even close to the amount of money would be feasible. Wouldn't it be prudent to focus research, intensity, public speculation on NASA to launch more lunar expeditions and manned missions, which we can do very easily now, and find out what's in those ruins up there?
If everything were equal, you're probably correct. But because this is a political game and it's not equal, there are some distinct advantages to the Mars option versus the Moon option. The problem with Mars is made easier now because there has been a tremendous political constituency involved in demanding these pictures. A lot of Americans asked for something of their government, as John Everhart said many years ago, and they got it. They got these 3 pictures. So they care about what's on them. They will care about the results, the conferences that are being planned, and the discussions that are going to go forth, and where there's even a discussion behind the scenes with Nightline, and you might actually in the next week or two see a Nightline program dealing with the Cydonia question and the options for what do we do next. The problem with the Moon is that you're starting from ground zero. Apart from the small group of researchers involved in our community, most people aren't even aware that there has been some amazing stuff found and forgotten on the Moon. And even with the Prospector mission, the current NASA orbiter, which is mapping the Moon for, among other things, water, it does not carry a camera. The camera was sent up in a DoD mission called Clementine, where those images, the ones that were, shall we say, suspicious, could be quietly classified. So the unclassified mission, the open mission, just fortuitously doesn't carry a camera. So it's much more difficult politically to get a broad base of interest in going back to the Moon with men and women than it is in following up, I believe, with Mars. Starting with, and we're not asking for a manned mission tomorrow, we simply want 12 more pictures from this spacecraft, because given those pictures, we can make the case unequivocal to where even Jason's grandmother, is she here?
She wasn't able to.
Oh, darn, I missed the test. Say again? Oh, okay. And that would certainly will more than do. We'll be able to look at these and say, oh my God, somebody was down there. At that point, politically, it's over the hill, it's over the top. We have won. Because then the gold card, remember, you're dealing with an honest part of NASA and a dishonest part. The dishonest part has manipulated the honest part into thinking there's nothing there. As soon as the honest part gets there's something there, then all of the normal rules that are supposed to apply will apply, and we'll be off to Mars. And there's an advantage of going to Mars as opposed to the moon. In fact, it's not cheaper. All right? In fact, it probably is easier because we know on Mars there are all kinds of things waiting for us to make it much more economically viable to sustain an expedition, bases, colonies, whatever, than there is on the moon. Remember, the water on the moon is only at the North and South Pole at the moment. You can't really live off the land on the moon. You can, and there are a lot of plans sitting on the shelves for manned expeditions that would allow you to live off the land with a Mars expedition. In fact, all you would have to do, and this is one of my favorites, is you would basically make minor modifications to the space station, and you send it to Mars. As I said on the other night on Bell, it doesn't care where it lives. If I wanted a quick and inexpensive way to get to Mars, I would take all the billions of dollars that they invested in the space station, and I would put a nuclear engine on it and some fuel tanks, and I would send it and a crew to Mars. Because you almost paid for a Mars expedition at that point. Yes?
I don't mean necessarily